Hello, and welcome to the Formal Review. Today we'll be talking about the 2022 film, Thor, Love and Thunder. Now sit back, relax, grab your drinks. Now let's talk about this film.
What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Formal Review. This is Season 5, Episode 11, and I thank you all for tuning in once again. Now, in this episode, we will be going into an analysis on the newest film in the MCU and also where it stands compared to the other Thor films and also the entire MCU. So stay tuned. Now, before I get into anything, I do want to preface this episode with a slight spoiler warning. As always, I do my best to not ruin the movie for you. However, in this analysis, there will be some spoilers, more so than some other episodes. However, there will be a spoiler-free section at the beginning, and then when I go into spoilers, I'll give more of a definitive warning so that you can either stop there and go watch the film, come back and hear it, or you can continue on if you don't care. Also,
I know I talk about this at the end, but the data shows that most people don't listen to that part, so I want to talk about it here and reiterate the importance of leaving reviews on your favorite subscription services. I do read those because I do want to grow, because these episodes are really for all you listeners out there, and I want to keep this entertaining. So what do you want to hear? Do you want to hear games? Do you want to hear more of the 4K stuff? Do you want to hear me talk about a certain movie? If you want to come on and talk to me about something, if you want to debate, I'm always open to do stuff like that, so you can always reach out to me on social media. I always want to grow and improve, and
just because something works doesn't mean that it cannot be improved.
so if there's something that you want me to improve on, let me know, and I will grow as such.
anyway, so let's get back to the film at hand. So let's sit back, relax, grab your drinks, and let's talk about this film. Thor, Love and Thunder is a superhero film based on Marvel Comics character Thor. It is the direct sequel to 2017's Thor Ragnarok, and it is the 29th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also known as the MCU. It was directed by Taika Waititi, who also co-wrote the script with Jennifer Caitlin Robinson, and obviously stars Chris Hemsworth, Christian Bale, Tessa Thompson, Jamie Alexander, Waititi himself, Russell Crowe, and Natalie Portman. Now, without going into spoilers, the plot is simple enough. The film has Thor attempting to find inner peace, but he also must return to action and recruit Valkyrie, Korg, and Jane to stop Gore, the God Butcher, from eliminating all the gods across the cosmos. Now, the film shows Thor's existential issue of him not knowing his place in the world, as he is this only remaining person of royal blood, and everyone who Thor has loved has left him, and he is now once again going through some trust issues. At the end of the day, this film has Thor going through an essential midlife crisis that builds steadily toward a fairly emotional and life-altering character arc for him. The story also delves into the film's anti-hero and his backstory and how he came to who he is. Now, Gore, who is played by Bale, is a simple story in the sense of showing a path of revenge that one may take when they are spit on by their own gods. He is a complex anti-hero deserving of empathy because he has lost the only person he loves due to this lack of apathy of his god. And Bale honestly plays his story and character absolutely masterfully, and he is extremely creepy at times, especially when he comes out of the shadows. The scene with the Asgardian children is absolutely terrifying. Other than Bale, Hemsworth is able to still have his charm as Thor, and Portman gives Jane this resilience and vulnerability to her character. Thompson does well with Valkyrie, though her story along with Thor is very much secondary to the other characters in the film. Again, the best performance is Bale as Gore, as he is able to potentially go down as one of the most convincing and terrifying villains in Marvel history. Now, from the production side of things, the film looks good at times, but some of the CGI is wonky at others. When it looks good though, it's absolutely stunning. However, the biggest problem again is with Waititi's direction in his need to put a punchline into almost every scene. And these jokes can fall flat or at best give a chuckle, especially in moments where they do not belong. And this hurts the first half of the film, both tonally and also from a narrative point of view. Luckily, these jokes start to fade as the film progresses, and that's where the film is the best. However, this tonal issue is what may push the viewer towards liking the film or or really hating it. However, the second half of the film is where it hits a very mature note, which Waititi does very well. However, the biggest praise that this film can get is from a viewer is that this is the first Thor film that does not really feel connected to the other films in the MCU. At the end of the day, it was a fun time, though it does have a somewhat mixed bag when it comes to its tone. The film has a decent dual storyline of Thor fighting Gore and his love story with Jane. Now, while they both succeed, the tonal issues of the film is what keeps it from being as great as it could have been. Now, that is a spoiler-free discussion, so anything after this point is going to be spoiler heavy. So like I said in the intro, if you have issues with spoilers, go see the film, come back and listen to this part. However, if you don't care about that, just keep listening. At this point, you have been warned in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so if we rewind with the Thor character, he has changed a lot over the course of the MCU and has gone through very significant developments, either for better or worse. In 2011, he made his first theatrical appearance in the Kenneth Branagh directed film. At the time, it was the 4th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this film was the first time that the MCU left Earth and went to the cosmic side of Marvel mythology. It introduced ideas of the 9 realms, Asgard, and many other mind-bending concepts that was a risk for non-comic book fans / general audience members at the time. Now, this film ended up grossing $181 million in the United States and Canada, and a worldwide total of $449.3 million, and it was the 15th highest grossing film of 2011. Now, at the time, newcomer Hemsworth as Thor showed himself as a well-versed action star that had some good comedic moments. He was supported by a very good cast, all of which were great in their respective roles, mostly Hiddleston, Hopkins, and Elba. At the time, Portman was decent, though the character was somewhat in a forced romance, but those notes do lead to more important things in this new 2022 film. Her character was decent, but it's mostly when she's by herself. The biggest flaw with this specific film is that there's no real antagonist in it. The ending is also really awkward, which is something that goes into almost all of the following Thor films, and this film does do a really good job at establishing the Thor character. However, once he's established, he doesn't really have much to do. It is enjoyable to a point, but aside from the reminder of the Thor arc through the MCU, this film doesn't really stand out very much. The second film, Thor: The Dark World, was released in 2013, which was directed by Alan Taylor, and basically post the first Avengers film, Thor teams up with Loki to save the 9 realms from Malekith, who wants to put the universe into darkness. Now, I don't hate this film personally as much as others do. I do think that there is some Lord of the Rings aspects to it. Unfortunately, that is kind of generic here, but after the events of Thor and working with the Avengers, Thor is essentially a little bit more humble here. He is still portrayed fairly well by Hemsworth. What a successful sequel relatively is supposed to do is to take the prior film and expand on it. Now, the film does this by showing viewers more of Asgard and also Thor's relationship with his family members. Now, the family drama is expanded on, and the other family relationships with each other. The action and comedy is still great here and much better than the prior film. However, the movie shines mostly here with Thor's relationship with Loki. The chemistry between Hiddleston and Hemsworth is fantastic, and while adopted brothers, their relationship feels real both from an actor point of view and also a character point of view, which again is something that can't be said about Thor's relationship with Jane. And again, unfortunately, this is perhaps one of the most annoying parts of the film, and it has nothing really due to Portman, but more with the character herself. And then there's this added love triangle that doesn't really go anywhere. And as with the prior film, the villain is, even though it exists more, Malekith is still kind of weak. He has a backstory, but it's just fairly generic stuff. The film as a whole only really seems to establish another one of the Infinity Stones, and that's all. The ending, it's still awkward, but the climax does feel more real than the first film. This film is better than the predecessor in some aspects, but it doesn't make it really any more memorable outside of those small little things that are really good. Now, this film earned $206.4 million in North America and got a worldwide total of $644.8 million, and it surpassed the gross of the first film after just 19 days. However, in this film is where the Thor character starts his traumatic downfall. It has one of the most saddest and tragic moments in the MCU with Frigga's funeral after she was killed while attempting to protect Jane, and this is was one of the first big losses that Thor had. Yes, in the first film, he does lose his worthiness, and when he lost his mother, Thor is devastated. But this is one of the biggest things that really, unfortunately, is one of the first of many friends and family that he ends up losing. He then thinks he loses his brother in battle, which then leads to a lot of trust issues. Then in 2017, the third film, Thor Ragnarok, was released. Now, this film is regarded as many people's either favorite Thor film or even favorite MCU film. No problem with that for them. In short, this film to me is fun, but the humor does not work because it takes away from the overall serious moments.
The damage is not too bad. As long as the foundations are still strong, we can rebuild this place. It will become a haven for all peoples and aliens of the universe. Those foundations are gone. Sorry.
Also, Hulk as a character is completely changed from the comics, and it's not a really good choice, and unfortunately, with Hulk, it looks like that's how they're going with it, and it leads more into the story arc that they go with Endgame, but it is what it is. However, it did bring in Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie, and she's absolutely wonderful in this. The biggest character points, though, for Thor are the traumatic ones. His father's passes, his friends, the Warriors 3 were killed almost instantly by Hela, and then Thor was forced to kill his sister in order to save his people. Then at the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, Loki was killed again at the hand of Thanos, and then during the same scene, he loses another friend in Heimdall. And with all this loss that he's experienced, it's really honestly a surprise that he still has the urge to fight.
Because that's what heroes do.
Superheroes are meant to inspire. They are meant to represent someone who we are not, or someone that can do something that we cannot. They can provide an escape into this world where someone is there for us when our police, medical, and social institutions have let us down. No matter their year, or there is somebody who feels sad or angry because of something that has happened. It could be the government has not done what they wanted. It could be a murder of someone because of their race. It could be a person who was betrayed by someone who they thought was a close friend. We live in a world where there are a lot of problems, no matter your political views. People want someone like Superman or Thor who they could depend on to save them when the humans who are supposed to can't or won't. We want a person like Thor to do what the rest of us aren't courageous enough to do and take a stand when it's not convenient to do so. Now, clinical psychologist Robin Rosenberg wrote that superhero stories help us, quote, finding meaning in loss and trauma, discovering our strengths, and using them for good purpose, end quote. This choice of doing what is right versus what is easy is a choice that we as humans make every day. Now, we want to attach ourselves to these characters. We want to see them in ourselves. We want to see those with fantastical abilities are still imperfect and relatable. We want to be comfortable with seeing them struggle with ordinary problems, and as such, they're still able to do the right thing in the end. More people enjoy these characters outside of children and quote-unquote nerds than ever before. Superheroes have become the modern day mythology and really tackle issues from struggles of high school to mental illnesses. No matter which superhero you attach yourself to or when you attach yourself to them, there's no denial the effect that they have on our lives. Now, this relatable aspect of Thor comes in Avengers Endgame when he gained a significant amount of weight over the 5-year gap, likely due to all the beer that he drank. Even being the source of some of the film's comedy, this was a representation of the character's depression and guilt that came after everything that he's gone through and then failing to stop Thanos' snap. While Thor might be one of the first Avengers to put on a smile in the midst of tragedy and danger, it really shows that it's almost a mask to really hide his own pain. Now, some may say that in Thor Ragnarok, Thor is a bit more arrogant as a superhero, so this doesn't make sense. But when one looks at his traumatic experience, his arrogance is almost a bigger mask of the weight of his previous losses and failures, which are starting to catch up with him. Because he's failed to save or keep the people that he loved in his life, he puts on a smile and attempts to laugh away his despair. However, in Avengers Endgame, he has to face his fears and understands that he can't do everything on his own. Even though he has failed, his reaction to it is just like everyone else, and he's still a hero. Again, even though it is used mostly for jokes, his progression to quote-unquote Fat Thor is a very natural one. Leading up to the blip, he has held in his anger, grief, and hurt, and choosing to ignore the trauma instead of confronting it. Then in the 5-year gap, he succumbs to these emotions, but as the film shows, he's able to get through it. And also his mother.
An idiot with an axe.
No, you're no idiot. You're here, aren't you? seeking counsel from the wisest person in Asgard.
Yeah, yes.
Idiot now. A failure? Absolutely.
It's a little bit harsh.
But you know what that makes you. Just like everyone else.
I'm not supposed to be like everyone else, am I?
Everyone fails at who they're supposed to be, Thor. The measure of a person, of a hero, is how well they succeed at being who they are.
He's able to use his abilities to stop Thanos and accept this failure is a natural part of life. Now fast forward to 2022 and we get Waititi's second outing with the character in Love and Thunder. In this new film, it's about how do you rebound from that? Where do you go after you recognize that? And the film starts off with Gorr and his daughter Love praying for help from their god Rapu. However, Love dies from the heat and exhaustion. Then when Gorr finds an oasis, he sees Rapu having a huge feast and doesn't really care about Gorr or even his daughter. As he loses faith in Rapu, the Necrosword appears in his hand and he uses it to kill the god. Then he begins this campaign to exterminate all gods everywhere. Now after the ends of Endgame, Thor has been hanging out with the Guardians of the Galaxy trying to find his place in the world. Then when the only remaining Asgard warrior, Lady Sif, again played here by Jamie Alexander, asks for help, he comes to her aid. She then tells him that Gorr has set his eyes on New Asgard and Thor heads to Earth to stop, and then that's what progresses the story. Now from a character standpoint, Thor has a few narrative points. Again, as I mentioned already, the first is his existential issue of him not knowing the place in his world, as he's the only remaining person of royal blood. Again, he's no longer the king. At the end of Endgame, he made Valkyrie king of New Asgard, and she's trying to run the kingdom through businesses and tourism. Again, at the end of the day, this film is a midlife crisis film that really builds towards this emotional and life-altering character arc for him. In this film, he starts off being able to push through all of his emotions with the help of the Guardians of the Galaxy. In a sense, they are able to provide a family that won't leave him until he is ready to open himself up to the world again. However, when he journeys to Earth to stop Gorr, he runs into his ex-girlfriend, Jane Foster. Now, Waititi here then shows the real issues that led to their breakup that seems less one-sided than each one thinks it was. However, now she has the power of the mighty Thor through Mjolnir. As reunions with exes go, it is slightly awkward and also somewhat endearing at the same time. And through their story, they're able to understand the reasonings for what they did and how they felt during the breakup. This, in a lot of cases, would lead them back together. However, the film shows that Jane has stage 4 cancer. And because her mighty Thor power strengthened her cells, her body does not fight against the cancer as much as it should. Thor sees that he's about to lose the person he arguably loves the most, and he can't do anything to stop her. Similar to how Jane felt when Thor is going off saving the world. At the same time, in this film, Jane feels the urge to fight Gorr no matter what her condition is.
Because that's what heroes do.
In a way, it's almost if they changed positions in their breakup and thus became more understanding of each other in the most tragic way possible. However, this is not the only good development that the film does. The film also delves into Gorr's anti-hero backstory and how he came to be who he is. And it really, again, shows the path of revenge that one takes when spit on by the gods. Thor and the gods have really never been the perfect beings that their followers believe them to be. It's shown through both Thor's dramatic downfall, and honestly, the real world versions as well. Some gods can be fickle, petty, and also self-serving, which is again shown later in the film through Crow's portrayal of Zeus. Now, Gorr is a very complex anti-hero deserving of empathy because he's lost again the person that he loves the most due to a lack of apathy of his god toward them. And again, Bale here plays the story absolutely masterfully, and he's extremely creepy at times when he comes out of the shadows. He has these really creepy yellow eyes, and again, the scene with the Asgardian children is absolutely terrifying. Now, other than Bale, again, all the other actors in the film play their characters fairly well, but again, Bale as Gorr is potentially one of the most terrifying villains in Marvel cinematic history. From a production side of things, the film looks good, but some of the CGI is wonky at others. But however, when it is good, it's again stunning. Now, the film does lack some comic book accuracy, however, it does work well for the story that Waititi is trying to tell. However, like I said in the spoiler-free section, the biggest problem with his direction is that he needs to put a punchline in almost every scene. And these jokes can fall flat, or at best give a chuckle, especially when they don't belong. This hurts the first half of the film from a tonal aspect and also a narrative aspect. And again, luckily these jokes do start to fade as the film progresses, and that's where the film works the best. Up to that point though, Waititi's absurdness can take away from the serious moments, which is again a problem that he has had in his first Marvel outing. However, because the jokes start to fade toward the film gets more and more serious, it shows a little bit more maturity in the final half of the film. Versus what happened in Ragnarok, it ends up being a little bit more too much Disney Marvel input, whereas this one feels a little bit more like Waititi had more control over the type of humor or where he would want humor. Either way though, this tonal issue is what may push the viewer towards liking the film or really hating it, especially with its runtime of about 2 hours. However, again, the second half of the film is where it hits a very mature note, which is what Waititi does very well. However, the biggest praise that this film can get is that it is arguably the first Thor film that does not feel really connected to the other films in the MCU. Yes, the Guardians are there at the beginning, but they don't really have much of an impact on the story. There obviously are Easter eggs to the rest of the MCU, but the main story arc is not dependent on those. The film at the end of the day is not one that I'm rushing back to see. However, I am very excited to watch this in the home theater space. The soundtrack I thought was a lot of fun. At the end of the day, it was a fun time, though it does have somewhat of a mixed bag when it comes to its tone. The film has a decent enough dual storyline of Thor fighting Gore and his love story with Jane, and while they both succeed, the tonal issues is what keep the film from being great as it could have been. The film succeeds with the story, message, ending, and some of its direction. It really falls with its details. So I would rate it a 3.5 out of 5. Now with this rating, it is on the same level as the first Thor film and also Ragnarok in my mind. However, I would prefer this one over the latter two. But in the overall MCU, it does fall a little short of the top 20 at number 21, mostly due to those tonal issues. But let me know what you thought of the film and where does it stand in the overall MCU for you. Let me know. Hit me up on social media.
The Formal Review is on Facebook, Twitter, and the Gram, and also YouTube. The handle's all the same. It's at The Formal Review.
Don't forget to subscribe to any of the platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere where you can find a podcast, on Spotify, or even subscribe to the channel on YouTube. You can also check out The Painted Lines, where I also contribute a few other ways. And please leave a review on there so I can know how to improve, because that's really how I grow as a human being. And I want to keep this show entertaining for you all.
And for anyone who has supported me on a financial basis, I thank you very much for supporting me in that way. For anyone who wants to support, you can go to anchor.fm/The Formal Review. Click support this podcast, and any donation is appreciated. Thank you all again for tuning in. And until next time,
be happy, enjoy life, and be positive.
And see you at the movies.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Formal Review. Cheers, and we'll see you next time.